Hey everyone, we're live on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's Karen Stuckey here. How are you, everyone? I've got a great person here sitting, wrong way, that way, next to me, virtually. It's Carl Verdouw. How are you, Carl?
Very well, thanks, Karen. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. So we're going to have an interesting chat tonight, and if anyone's watching and you've got questions, I would love to see your questions in the comments, and or anything you want to ask or anything you want to say, and even let us know where you're watching from. Pop it in the comments, and I would love to know who's watching out there so that we don't feel so alone here in the virtual world. So Carl is from Financian. Carl has helped many churches, Christian schools, not-for-profits and businesses with refinancing, getting funding, and much more, which we're going to learn about tonight. So Carl, can you tell us a bit more about yourself, please?
Yeah, of course. So, as everyone knows, my name is Carl. I actually live in Brisbane, where I was born and raised. Have worked across the country with different types of banks and in finance my whole life. And I feel that finance is really the call and the passion on my life. My wife has never understood that. She always hates finance, but we all have our passion. Yeah, and a lot of people now. So I think the challenge for me on this is trying to keep people engaged. And as soon as they see that someone's talking about finance, that they don't just click off the webinar or fall asleep behind the side. No, I can genuinely say that finance is my passion. It's what I feel very strongly on my heart, that it's where God wants me. It's where He wants me to put my skills, and He's given me the passion to sort of make it easy for me to do and not necessarily make it a chore. So yeah, it's good.
And through that passion, you've started your own business. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, correct. So as I said, I've always been in finance my whole career. I was in finance for the better part of a decade, working across some of the major lenders. And one of the banks that I used to work for, I actually worked in a specialised team where we developed bespoke lending solutions for churches, schools, and not-for-profits. And after a few changes and seeking roles, eventually my wife actually, who's quite entrepreneurial herself, and she's started her own not-for-profit organisations, and she just encouraged me, and we had a few changes in our life, and she said, why don't you try doing something yourself? And that's when I got the idea to launch Financian, which really allowed me to help a wider variety of churches, schools, or faith-based organisations without being limited to just a certain sector. Where if you work for a larger organization, they say you can only help clients between this size and that size, and they have to be within a certain locale and have all of these different sort of policy measures. Where starting Financian, it allows me to just work with all of the lenders, and I can work with all churches and faith-based organisations around Australia. So yeah, it's really fantastic to have the opportunity to be able to put all of the skills and the blessings and knowledge that God's given me into Financian for the benefit of churches, schools, and any faith-based organisation around the country.
That's fantastic. Oh, I can hear myself. What services do you offer?
Yeah. So essentially, the main service in which someone might need or have the need for myself or Financian is if you work on a board or you're a business manager or a finance manager at some sort of faith-based organisation, be it not-for-profit, a charity, a church, or a school. Rather than you having to sell your story to all different banks when you say want to purchase a property, you want to expand, or you just want to you want to obtain some vision in your organization, and debt is a need in allowing you to obtain that vision, you can use my services to effectively be a conduit between yourself and the lenders. And rather than you going to the banks and not knowing what they're going to say, not knowing what information you need to present to them. I don't charge any fees because I receive commissions from the bank on successful settlement. So I can just work with your organization to tell you exactly what the bank is going to look for, because I used to work with them. I know what they're going to look for when they assess your company, what sort of financial metrics they're going to analyze, and I can help equip you and prepare you for that. And then I go to the bank on your behalf and say, look, here's a great organization. Here's all the key risks and everything we've done to mitigate those risks. And here's why, they stand a great chance and why you should support them with the products that they're seeking. So, and that's a complex way to answer it. A simple way to answer it is, if you've ever used a mortgage broker, it's the same process, but for a business. So a mortgage broker, you say, I need a home loan. They go and they find the best loan for you. If you come to Financian or myself as a finance broker for commercial businesses, it's the same process. You come to me, you tell me everything about your church or your school or your organization, and then you leave it up to me. I find the best deal for you and the most competitive solution for your need.
So what type of loans or things would churches purchase with the loans that you provide them? Is it small things, large things, or like buildings or in between?
The most common type of purpose for why a church needs a loan is usually to purchase a building. Often churches, when they start out in the grassroots stages, it's usually a home church, or they might be just hiring a cinema room or meeting at the local bowls club or something like that. And then eventually, once they have that membership base and they've had consistent few years of donations or saving for a building fund, they generally need finance in order for them to purchase a permanent location so that they can have their congregation meet on that property. So church building is number one. And number four for schools is usually when they're building new buildings, or if they're doing some sort of capital project. They usually have a mix of tuition fees, government grants, and then a little bit of debt as well. And that's where we can assist, is getting that final instrument. But the second most common is just equipment finance. Sometimes, it could be as simple as getting a lease for a car for the pastor. Or if you're quite a big church, it might be getting one of those really large, fancy screens so that everyone can see, the words of the songs. So, or music equipment. If you're not in a position where someone has been able to donate and bless the church with those, but you really need it, sometimes churches, unfortunately, just have to get a lease or an equipment loan, and that's another area which we can assist.
Are there any proactive steps churches can take to better position themselves to purchase a permanent building, for instance?
Absolutely. So the main thing that a lender looks for when a church comes to them is just, first of all, how long have they been around? Generally, if a church has only been around for 2 or 3 years, it's very difficult, because you have to look at it from a commercial sense. There are banks out there that do want to lend to churches. They have no issue in lending to churches. But just like with any business, they need to make sure that they're maintaining responsible lending obligations when they're providing a debt facility to the church, because none of them would ever want the situation where they would have to, put the church in default. They want to avoid that at all costs. So what I recommend to churches is, you want to have a history of demonstrating that you've been able to save a deposit for the church. Much like if you're going for a home loan nowadays, you need to demonstrate the ability that you can live within your means, that you've saved up for a house deposit, and that when you get that home, your income is still going to be able to pay for your home repayments. It's the same with the church. You need to demonstrate your ability to save for a deposit. And you need to demonstrate your ability through your financial statements that you will be able to maintain paying for the loan in the future. They understand there's a degree of variability in financial performance, but they still need to look at the whole picture. I think that's where having someone who has an expertise in the segment can really assist, because we can help explain the variability in certain financials. Because, COVID was a difficult one. There are a lot of churches which had just either really stellar years because JobKeeper was able to assist them, or there were some churches that unfortunately had some pretty hard times because they're in early stages of certain demographics, whatever have you. So that's the sort of the stuff where we can help explain to the lender on your behalf and make them either have acceptance for it, or, sometimes if the church isn't in the position, I'll be the first to let the church know that. I never want to see a church get into a position where they're not going to be able to afford their loans, and it's going to cause issues on the congregation, and it's going to cause issues for people coming to the church and being able to meet God. So whenever I'm assessing the church, I want to make sure that they can afford it and that it's not putting them under undue stress. And I'll let the church know that even before. Sometimes I've had churches that are saying, look, we understand, but we're going to have faith that someone will provide, and we want to get this, we need to get this property. And I say, okay, and I think that's also one of the benefits is I go to church myself. So I understand that there's an element of faith and there's also an element of finance, and I can see those two as one. I don't have to look at them separately. So I do understand when a church sometimes says, look, we have faith, and if a bank approves, we want it. And I'll say, look, that's all right, professionally speaking. Maybe it's a bit too risky, but if you guys have that journey, I'll support you and I'll assist you. But I'll never hold back from letting the church know if I think a product's unsuitable or if I think it's a really great product for them.
Oh, that's good. Oh, I love that. And do you come across any particular common factors that make it difficult for churches to obtain finance?
I do, yeah. One of the things that I'll say is churches are usually phenomenal stewards of finance, because I think, it does say that a lot in the Bible. We have to be stewards of finance. And I find generally the boards of not-for-profits, they like to be quite conservative in their forecast for the following year. And outright they should be. When you're using donations and you're stewarding other people's money, you do need to exercise a degree of responsibility. One of the issues, though, that I can see is when that goes too far, because I have to use the financial information that churches provide me when I go to the bank. And if a church or a not-for-profit or a school provides me, say, a forecast, and it's showing, they're forecasting that they're going to experience losses every single year, even though they know they're going to, receive a surplus, but they're just saying, we just want to be ultra conservative. It's hard because the bank would look at that and say, how can we lend to someone who's forecasting losses? So whilst I encourage and support conservative and good stewardship of money, you do have to sometimes be realistic in where you think your church is going to be. And I always would say, you round down your revenue and you round up your expenses in forecasting, but don't cut your revenue off at the knees and then make sure you can float, because we do have to present whatever information you hand to me to the bank. And if you're forecasting losses, or if you are saying in your own financial information that you can't afford the loan, the bank won't be able to provide it to you.
That's great, Carl. It's great hearing all your wisdom and being able to understand more about what you do, because I haven't come across anyone who specifically deals with church, like a church broker, I suppose.
Yeah.
A church finance broker. So it's great touching base with you and hearing more about this.
Yeah, thank you. I have heard from quite a few people that it is a gap in the market, but there hasn't been many people that have stepped out to provide this service. And I just think, I've seen a lot of churches, and, one church that I've helped previously, unless you go into your church is quite large and you have a large loan, generally if you go to, if you go to one of the major lenders, most of them have a specialized team for assisting churches, but they usually have a minimum debt requirement of, say, 1 or 2 million before you'll go to that team. And if your church is seeking a loan less than that, usually you go to a business banking center, and unless that banker at that particular center that the church is seeing has had significant experience with helping churches, they often won't know the right questions. They'll often ask for the wrong information, and the credit manager who looks over the deal is in the same position and doesn't understand. And sometimes you can get a really horrible level of service and be turned away from finance just because the banker didn't understand how to assess a church deal. And I actually had one example where the pastor has allowed me to, use his name and his church as an example. It was Centrepoint Church here in Queensland, and they had a little bit of a complex structure. They wanted to obtain finance, and all of the lenders just weren't sure. They approached all the four majors, and they were like, "Oh, we don't know if we can help you. It's a bit too complex." So they reached out to me just through mutual connections, and I looked at it. I said, "Nah, this is pretty easy. This is nothing out of the ordinary." After I submitted the application to those same lenders, all of the lenders came back with approval and were competing for the deal and like sharpening their interest rate and trying to give. And we ended up getting, the finance approved. We restructured their banking so it was more simple and got them on a sharper interest rate. And I think it just goes to show that if you use a broker who understands your business and understands what it takes to make a church run, you'll have a much higher chance of obtaining approval than if you just try your luck when you approach a bank and hope that you get the right banker to assist you.
Sounds so exciting. I want to get a loan.
Well, I'm not trying to encourage people to get loans. That is
I just want to use your services.
I'm happy to assist. If you believe that getting a loan is right for the church, it would be my pleasure to be able to assist anyone who's watching this live stream or anyone in the church support network.
That's fantastic. So are you able to help any church in any location around Australia?
I am, yeah. And that's one of the benefits of being a finance broker. The banks do not mind if I assist churches, and especially over COVID, electronic signatures and Zoom meetings have become such a normal now that they really don't mind. And you can overcome anti-money laundering and know your customer laws, because even though we're doing it over Zoom, usually the board of directors still have to pop into a branch physically to see it. So they don't mind if the broker is based in Queensland, but I'm helping a South Australian church. And when borders open, I'll imagine I'll be on a plane a lot more because I like to see my clients anyway. But yeah, it's no issue, which is really good. And I've helped a lot of churches in New South Wales at the moment. Seems to be where there's a lot of activity up here in Queensland, which you'd expect. I'm based here, but all around the country. So it's really fantastic. I love it.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm just going to pop up your website there. So if you want to get in contact with Carl, there's his website flowing down below on the ticket. Touch base with him, and I'm happy. I'm sure he's happy just to answer any questions that you have or inquiries to help in this area of church and loans and finance in the broker side. And you can.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, often as well, you don't have to have all of your ducks in a row before you come to see me if you're seeking finance. I'm happy for churches just to, send me an email or give me a call if they're thinking or, they've had the vision that they want to obtain a property for their church, for their congregation. I'm happy to work with you, a few years before you even need the loan. And I can give you a bit of guidance to say, look, this is where you'll need to be. How much are you seeking to borrow? This is where we probably need to see the surplus balance. So I also offer those services where I can work with churches to position them. So I've got quite a few churches which they don't need my services till 2023 or 2024. But we're already talking to each other to understand and guide them as to where they'll need to be come 2023 or 24. For them to obtain the loan.
Oh, that's so fantastic, Carl.
Yeah.
It's I'm sure it's gonna. This is answering someone's prayer. I have a feeling right now. I don't know. It just stirs my spirit. Anyway, well, thank you so much, Carl. Was there anything you wanted to add on the end of this interview?
No, just a general. If people want to get in contact with me, we do have a Facebook page. It's not very heavily monitored, but the best way to get in contact is just to jump on the Financian website, which is floating below, or to send me an email or to give me a call. I'm available Monday through Friday, and I also work on Saturday by exception if people are too busy, but always happy to help any church.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Thanks, Carl. And we'll have to do another interview next year and see how things are going and share some more stories of churches that you're helping.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate the opportunity to have me on. And I hope everyone was able to learn something about church finance. And if they have any questions, welcome to send them through.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
That's all right.
Well, that's all, everyone. We'll see you next time.